Okay, thank you, Douglas. Hello, everyone. I am Shanjia Zhang from Lanzhou University in China. My main research interest is environmental archaeology, focus on the Holocene interaction between human and the environment. Thanks to Professor Chen Guangjie for the invitation and Professor Douglas for chair the meeting. It gives me great pleasure to make an oral presentation here. The topic of my talk is detecting the imprint of human impact on the environment during the prehistoric and historic period in the Middle and Eastern Silk Road. A brief self-introduction. I received my PhD in physical geography last year, and I'm currently working as a postdoctoral researcher. I am mainly focused on these three areas of research. My presentation today will focus on these 5 areas. We know human activities have had a profound impact on the Earth system. In this context, anthropocene has been increased, debated in recent years. In the last 100 years, human activities have had a great impact on the Earth's environment. In earlier prehistoric and historic times, the impact was gradually increased, although at a lower intensity, as seen in slash and burn agriculture, metallurgical activities, deforestation et al. Past human impacts have received multidisciplinary attention. The number of related papers is increasing year by year. The traces of past human activity is diverse. This is closely related to the intensity of human settlement, activity patterns et al. Since the Holocene, human activities have continued to impact the natural environment. Taking vegetation as an example, the green line is the vegetation cover reconstructed by pollen, and the blue line is the simulation results. It can be seen that there is a significant shift between the two since 8,000 years, which is likely to be related to human activities. Therefore, research on the impact of human activities at different spatial and temporal scales is necessary. In China, past studies of human environmental interactions have revealed significant spatial and temporal differences in their patterns of change. Currently, studies related to the Eastern China are more frequent due to the strong human activities in the region, which is visible as dense archaeological sites. However, research on Western China is slightly weaker. The middle and eastern section of the Silk Road region has a wide variety of natural environments and a flourishing archaeological culture, as well as being a cultural exchange channel for prehistoric and historic periods. Therefore, the region is an ideal area to study the human imprint of the past. My research work mainly focused on these areas, the yellow cycle location. Then is the materials and method. My work mainly utilizes these 3 materials. analysis of black carbon in lake sediment to reconstruct the history of paleo-fires, analysis of geochemical elements in archaeological sediments to reveal metallurgical pollution, and analysis of archaeological charcoal to explore human impacts on vegetation. There are different materials and methods to study paleo-fire history on different time scales in the past. Among them, lake sediments have good continuity, sensitivity, and high resolution, which is a good carrier to record the formation of paleo-fire history. Black carbon is an important method. The two main components, char and soot, formed at 300 to 600 degrees and over 600 degrees, respectively. They have different physical and chemical properties and can reflect the paleo-fire information of different spatial scales. There are three main steps to getting black carbon data. After chemical pretreatment, the filter membrane loaded with samples was obtained by filtration, and then tested by thermal optical carbon analyzer. This is a pre-sample of the test, mainly use a combination of a thermal and optical method. The first discussion is about the impact of human activities on fire. Our previous research found that Neolithic slash and burn agriculture in northern China resulted in a significant increase in biomass burning, and the effects start at different times in different areas. Millet farming here intensified 7,000 years ago in eastern Mongolia and 6,000 years later in Guanghui Basin. The corresponding black carbon increased rapidly during this period. So how did the paleo-fire history evolve along the Silk Road? How do they relate to climate and human activity? The middle section of the Silk Road is mainly located in Central Asia. Its climate system is mainly controlled by the westerly, and its climate environment is obviously different from that of the Asia Monsoon region. In addition, the areas have a long history of nomadic culture. The influence, process, and mechanism of these factors on fires in this region are still unclear. The lake we studied, Kalakuli, is an alpine lake in the Pamir Plateau. The Kalakuli Lake course spans 4,200 years. Our reconstruction of the highest resolution about 20 years paleo-fire history in Central Asia, compared with the same core indicator of moisture change, shows that paleo-fire intensity corresponds well to the moisture on the intercadal scale. We can see each blue shade is about 30 years with peak to peak value. This is mainly due to the fact that biomass is a limiting factor for fire activity in steppe regions, and precipitation is a limiting factor for biomass in the area. Further comparison with paleoclimate environment shows that there is a positive correlation between paleo-fire intensity and humidity at 4,200 to 1,000 BP on the centennial and millennium scales. Since 1,000 BP, the relation between paleo-fire and humidity has changed significantly, showing a negative correlation, indicating that other factors play an important role. The reconstructed land use area in Central Asia shows a rapid increase since 1,000 BP. Therefore, it is inferred that the increased intensity of agricultural and pastoral production activities reduce the accumulation of surface biomass and vegetation, thus reducing the probability of fire occurrence. This stage of human activity breaks the previous pattern of long-term impacts of climate change. We reconstructed the fire changes under different influence factors. In a scenario dominated by climate change, when the water vapor carried by the westerly increased, the regional humidity increased, which promotes the increase of vegetation. In the spring and autumn, this withered vegetation provides a good foundation for fires and thus promotes them. In a scenario dominated by human activities, human harvesting of grassland in summer increased the degree of landscape fragmentation. In addition, the consumption of surface vegetation by livestock leads to less available fuel, further inhibiting fire occurrence. In Xinjiang, livestock are not often grazed in winter and autumn to use up excess fuel as a precaution against fires. During this stage, human activities break the previous pattern of long-term impacts of climate change on fire. The eastern part of the Silk Road lies in the ectone of agriculture and animal husbandry, and there were frequent conflicts between different regions. It is not clear how the war affected the paleo-fire activity in the area. Research on the Tianchi Core is expected to answer this question. Compared with paleoclimate evidence, it is found that the paleoclimate intensity is low under the background of high humidity in the middle Holocene. In the late Holocene, with the increase of drought and expansion of grassland, the paleo-fire activity increased gradually. There is a high correlation between them. Therefore, we argue that moisture is a dominant factor on the millennium scale. Increased drought and grassland expansion promoted the occurrence of fire. Moreover, the dramatic increases in paleo-fire amplitudes on the centennial scales over the past 2,000 years is inconsistent with changes in climate and vegetation, and is probably caused by human activities. So what kind of human activities is associated with it? We note that warfare activities have an important contribution to fires. For example, in the classic Maya period, and in the Vietnam region. China has a long history of documentary records based on literature. Studies of fire factors over the last 2,000 years have found that war ranks first among the known causes of fire accidents in Chinese history. The use of fire as a military tool is clearly documented in the book of the Art of the War. A typical example is the war between Song Dynasty and Western Xia Dynasty, in which both sides attacked each other by burning grassland. Background trajectories and potential source contribution function were performed for the region to determine the direction of the air mass and the source range of the particulate matter near Tianchi Lake. On this basis, we have made statistics on war activities in the area. The results showed that there were several areas around Tianchi where wars were more frequent. Because of the frequent use of fire in wars during the historic period, we conclude that the Tianchi Core is a good record of war activities over the past 2,000 years. Okay, compared with the evidence of paleoclimate and human activity, paleo-fires was found to have the highest correlation with the number of wars. In the Eastern Han Dynasty, Tang Dynasty, Northern Song Dynasty, and Ming Dynasty, the peak of paleo-fire and war corresponded one by one. This further supports our hypothesis. The above results indicate that climate is the main factor controlling fires in the areas along the Silk Road, but there are differences. In the Middle Silk Road, the increase in moisture enhanced the amount of vegetation and therefore promotes wildfire activities. In the Eastern Silk Road, increased drought caused the expansion of herbaceous vegetation and facilitated wildfire activity. Human farming and animal husbandry activities in the Middle Silk Road have reduced the accumulation of surface biomass and suppressed fire activity since 1000 BP. Warfare activities related to the change of Chinese dynasties increased the probability and the intensity of fire since 2000 BP in the Eastern Silk Road. In addition to the impact on fires, metallurgical activities during the Bronze Age caused pollution of sediment. We can see the Hexi corridor is a key metallurgy center in China. Bronze artifacts unearthed here account for around 70% of the number of unearthed bronze artifacts in China before 3600 BP. We collected 2060 anthropogenic samples from 8 late Neolithic and 14 Bronze Age sites and 32 natural samples from off-site areas. X-ray fluorescence was used to measure the element's content. The result shows that heavy elements such as copper and lead associated with the metallurgical activities are significantly higher than the background values, especially during the 40,000 to 3,400 BP. Pre-sample component analysis and cluster analysis also proved our findings. The independent and separated clusters show the discrepancy between anthropogenic and natural sediment samples. Analysis of lake sediment near 4 major prehistoric metallurgical centers in China indicates that metallurgical activity did likely resulted in the release of heavy metal elements. This is because their rapid increase corresponds to the time of the beginning of the metallurgy in the area. A heavy metal element content of sediment from archaeological sites in the Hexi corridor increases significantly at 4,000 to 3,400 BP. Sediment pollution is closely related to the intensity of metallurgical activities. The shift of metallurgical centers is the main reason for the spatial and the temporal differences in the environmental impacts of metallurgical activities. The last study was on the impact of human activities on vegetation. The study of our team showed that agriculture facilitated human permanent occupation Tibetan Plateau after 3,600 BP. The introduction of cold-tolerant barley and wheat and sheep was a major factor. In the context of rapidly increasing intensity of human activities, a human influence forest succession on the northeastern Tibetan Plateau. This issue remained unclear before our study. Charcoal samples were collected at cultural and ash pits from 24 archaeological sites. And more than 8,000 charcoal remains were identified to solve this question. The history of human use of wood can be recovered through steps such as excavation of archaeological sites, flotation of soil samples, and identification of charcoal. The results show that humans mainly use conifers, broadleaf, and shrubs. Coniferous species were mainly used by humans until 3,600 BP, after which broad-leaved species predominated. And there are obvious spatial and temporal differences in the tree species. We believe that in addition to the constraints of the natural environment, human activities also play an important role. A comparison of climate and the vegetation in the region revealed that pollen before 3,600 BP was consistent with temperature and precipitation. On the other hand, the proportion of conifers decreased when the temperature increased and increased when the temperature decreased. However, after 3,600 BP, this phenomena changed. In other words, the proportion of conifers decreased when the temperature decreased, indicating that it was influenced by other factors. At the same time, the intensity of human activities was increased, and the proportion of broadleaf trees used by humans was also increased. We therefore infer that the continuous disturbance of coniferous forests by human activities in the region has led to their transformation to mixed coniferous forests. As a result, human has no choice but to utilize more broadleaf trees in the vicinity of archaeological sites. Our inferences is supported by modern forest succession studies that coniferous forests shift to broadleaf forests when disturbed by strong human activities. Okay, the conclusion is that the large-scale permanent settlement of humans above 2,500 meters on the Tibetan Plateau after 3,600 BP caused damage to the coniferous forests and caused them to change to broad-leaved forests, breaking the previous climate-controlled forest succession pattern. Here are some related papers. Okay, my presentation is over. Thank you.